Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and this video is going to show the fastest fully upgraded vehicles in the GTA Online Tuners class in terms of top speed. As always, the position counter is in the top left with the actual top speed the vehicle achieved in the top right, and since Tuners is a subclass rather than a full-fledged one, the positions within their own proper classes are also listed in the top left. This video only focuses on straight line performance, so if you're interested in racing, where braking, cornering and acceleration are all relevant, check the link in the description for the lap time testing series, and if you want to know more information about this testing, including the extent to which it's accurate and how useful it is for you personally, have a read of the full description as everything that you need is in there. This video lists all vehicles and is correct as of the Los Santos Tuners update. For any tuners added after that or other classes of cars, check the playlist linked in the second line of the description, and feel free to check out my Patreon or become a YouTube member if you want to support this work and get testing results of any new cars a little bit early. So first of all, we had the Warrener HKR, which is last place for both lap time and for top speed. Such a disappointing car in terms of performance. And then we had a number of sports cars that aren't too bad around the track, the Vector especially, as we saw in the lap time testing video, but don't do too well for top speeds. And these top speeds that we're seeing at the moment, where we've got a few of the non-sports cars mixed in, like the Dominators, the Tailgater, the Previan, obviously none of them are getting to the top spots in their own classes, because these kind of top speeds are not all that fantastic, you know, they're not that special. 115 mph, yes, it's good enough for second place in sedans, but for the Tailgater, for example, it's still a good 5 or 6 mph down on what the Shafter V12s can do. So once we've gotten through those sort of mix of non-sport cars, we've got the Euros here in the top 10 at 116.5, which is only good enough for 57th in sports, and it's not really that great, you know. A sort of standard top speed for sports cars is generally around the 119 mph range, so 116 isn't all that great. Same is true for the ZR350 at 117, only 53rd in the sports class. And yeah, a lot of the top cars in tuners, obviously as we saw for lap time, but also for top speed as well, are the sports tuners. But there is a significant difference to what we saw from that lap time testing video in terms of the order, with some of the better lap time cars like the Vector, as we saw, only managing to get 15th place for top speed, and here the Sultan RS only managing 8th place for top speed, whereas it was, you know, both of those cars were so good for lap time. The Dominator ASP does pretty well for considering it's a muscle car to get into the 119 mph range and get up into 7th, but the rest of the 6 cars that we've got in this list are all going to be the sports tuners. And I think it's a bit of a shame that these cars aren't just in a tuners class, you know, as by default and just on their own, making tuners a full-fledged class rather than just being a sort of subclass and having all these cars elsewhere. We've already got enough sports cars, you know, there's more than 80 sports cars now. We didn't really need all of these extra ones, and the fact that 12 of these tuners are sports cars, you can just, you know, you can pretty much use all of the tuners in just sports races anyway. So Futo GTX, by the way, manages to get into the top 5, holds onto a top 5 position despite being so bad around the track because it can't turn. Just like the regular Futo, it does have a decently high top speed, 119.8 miles per hour. It's actually good enough for the top third of all sports cars, almost anyway. So yeah, pretty good for the Futo GTX, at least in terms of top speed, but not so much in terms of cornering ability. And then we come on to the top 4, which is a different top 4 to what we saw from the lap time testing video. And we've got one of the sort of the big top 4 for lap time and for racers from that lap time testing video. First up in 4th place with the Calico GTF, a top speed of 121.3 miles per hour. That's a pretty respectable top speed, to be honest, and good enough for 22nd in the sports class. But again, like I was saying, these positions within the sports class, they belie sort of how quick these cars are. You know, 22nd in sports sounds like it's really far off, you know, there's a lot of cars ahead of it, which there are. But that's only really because there's just so many cars in sports that there naturally has to be a lot of cars pretty much everywhere. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of a missed opportunity if they're going to make a tuners class to just make a tuners class and not have these cars be in sports or other classes as well, and maybe take some of the cars that are in sports that could go in tuners and put them there instead, like an LG Retro Custom, for example, things like that. But alas, this is what we're stuck with a subclass. We had the Growler in 3rd place, and then the Comet S2 is in 2nd place, good enough for 14th in sports, with 123.0 mph top speed. Pretty decent and respectable for the Comet S2, and probably one of the biggest changes apart from the Futo in comparison to its position for lap time. But the ultimate number one for top speed is the Jester RR in the tuners class at least. It's good enough for a top 10 position in the sports class, which is very respectable, and 125 mph is quicker than a lot of supercars, to be honest. It's a really respectable top speed. The Jester RR it's nice to drive. It's obviously the quickest in a straight line in the default setups for these cars, and it's nicely balanced as well. It is just off the pace of the big four when it comes to racing and cornering performance, as we saw in the lap time testing video, which you can go check out to see all of these tuner cars and how they do in a race situation. But it still can be competitive if, the other drivers aren't quite on the pace, or they're not that great in faster cars. So it's still a nice one to use for sports races as well, if you're restricting yourself to a lower tier of cars. And obviously, as we could see from the comparison to the Warrener, it's a big difference. So even with a brand new class, there's always going to be a massive difference in performance, because Rockstar don't really know how to balance across a full class. But as I'm sure we all know by now, setting the vehicle stance in the interaction menu to lowered for these cars, and adding low grip tyres in the LS car meet to these tuner cars only, this only works for tuner vehicles, allows these cars to achieve higher top speeds at the cost of lap time. It's not something that you're ever going to want to use in a race with even a single corner, as we'll see. But yeah, if you put low grip tyres on and you stance the car to the lowered setting, you will be going much quicker in terms of straight line speed, but you will significantly sacrifice your lap time. Even not applying low grip tyres and just putting lowered stance on, it'll give you a small increase in performance in terms of straight line speed, but it will still make you so much worse around a lap. So it's never something that you want to use for a race, and that's why I don't test fully like this. But if you're interested, the quickest car in this setup is the Comet S2, now that everything's out and everything's been tested. With low grip tyres and lowered stance, it gets a top speed of 161 mph, which is faster than a Vigilante spamming its boost over a long distance. Again, don't use this setup or even a lowered stance without the low grip tyres in races, because it ruins the handling of the cars. But if you want the highest top speeds that's possible from these tuner cars, the Comet S2 is the best you can get at 161 mph. The next best being the Growler and the Calico, which are about 10 mph down on what the Comet S2 can do. So that's pretty much it for this one. Consider supporting on Patreon or become a YouTube member if you want testing results early. And remember to read the description for more info, comment with your thoughts, like the video if you enjoyed or found it helpful, and subscribe for more. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.